We are live. Hello, everyone. As you probably noticed by now, Ryan is still out nursing baby Sophia. He'll join us whenever he's able to join us. You probably won't see him anytime soon. Brendan had to step away this week, but we have a pretty good stand-in replacement. Courtney, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm not busy with a newborn, so I have I have time
Yeah.
for this. I'm not changing diapers, so this is easy.
So yeah, if this is your first time watching, Courtney is a affiliate of the blog, and recently she has also been my Pokemon trainer because I finally got a Switch. We'll have to
Oh
talk
yeah,
more
I have all.
about. Yeah, we'll also have to talk more about helping me beat the master, excuse me, the gym leader Nissa of the gym, the water gym. So we'll have to talk about that later. But we have a lot to talk about today. Um, I was informed that some of my news may not be timely because I have been nursing an injury and I was sleeping all day yesterday, but we still have a lot to talk about. First, I want to get into Elizabeth Warren. You and I, Courtney, we definitely were not feeling Joe Biden at the beginning of this process. Personally, I voted for Elizabeth Warren. I voted for Elizabeth Warren. I'm sure you voted for somebody else, but
Mhm.
the question I have for you: you start to see Biden making task force with Bernie Sanders. You start to see him working on policies with Elizabeth Warren. How does this make you feel going into November?
I feel better. I think that the Democrats are listening. They're not the best at listening, but I think they're kind of listening more at the younger generation, the more progressive
Hmm.
leaning. I think they're finally hearing that. I think in 2016 they weren't trying to hear any of that at
Right.
all. I mean, with some of the recent policy pushback, like some of my hopes get back a little bit, but I do think the fact that they're being added to or to potential task forces and such, I think we're in a step in the right direction. I'm
Hmm.
still hesitant. I mean, I'm gonna go look what the only other option is. So it's gonna vote. I'm gonna vote anyway, but I feel a little less gross doing it, but I do think it's a good sign for the future. Honestly, I think AOC. Honestly, obviously, I think that's a big part of it. Honestly, I think not only
Hmm.
just us the people, we don't matter, but I think
Right.
getting more and more progressive Congress people in there that are young helps out a lot too. I try
Yeah.
not to. Sorry, I try not to stand politicians, but like Elon Omar and AOC, like I feel like okay, that's like my not only like demographic representation, but like
Right.
political representation. Not only that they're loud, I think that their push is probably one of the biggest reasons too, because now they're seeing so many people support her. They're like, well, we can't just ignore this now.
Yeah, you actually like before I get into my other point, you actually raise a good point. Like take someone like AOC, she's doing live streams and raising money, and when she first got into office, that was frowned upon. Like, oh, why is she? Why? And that just shows the disconnect that she's like of our age group, so she's
Mhm.
able to connect to people in a different way. And I think they're starting to realize, like, hey, someone like this is a force, and this may be the future of politics. That we're just too old and wrinkly to realize it. But yeah, people like that I do think are shifting the party left. But as far as Elizabeth Warren was going, when Joe Biden got the nomination, I like I said, I was like, it's gonna be more of the same. But since then, he has made like a surprisingly like progressive platform, more so than Obama in his previous two terms. Um, it started with Bernie, and then now seeing that Elizabeth Warren is helping out,
Mhm.
and if Joe can be the great uniter of the party, I think that'll be his lasting legacy, and yeah, that'll be great. He needs to pick the right VP though, which goes into the next thing. By the way, I would like to preface this with I recently had some Delta work done, so I was like knocked out all day yesterday. And my question to court was going to be, who's up in the VP power rankings?
Kind of, kind of go.
I had Karen Bass, Stacey Abrams, Kamala Harris, Warren Duckworth. But as Courtney just informed me, It leaked recently,
It
allegedly.
leaked allegedly from Politico that it's going to be Kamala Harris,
Mhm.
which I do have some thoughts about.
Oh yeah,
Um,
please share, please share.
I mean, she wasn't my favorite. I feel like I'm gonna get like attacked by like the Kamala High, but she's not. I just think, especially with the current discourse going on and her record, the one that especially was a big attacking point by Joe
Hmm.
Biden, and I don't know if it's the best choice. I mean, same thing with Bass though, because I mean, she's really good friends with the mayor of Los
Hmm.
Angeles, and that's not
Hmm.
the best look right now. I am happy that there is, representation not only as a black woman, but a woman, but at the same time, we're having lots of protests and everything because of police brutality. You have someone I know people hate this, like she is a police, she's a cop. If you're I forget the prosecutor, you're a cop still, essentially because you work with
Yeah, yeah.
you're like
She's
people think it's not a
on.
cop. You're a cop. You can't disassociate that. And I'm
Mhm.
very intrigued to see what type of discourse she's willing to participate in and what she's willing to do. But I think it's good for that he's like, okay, it's gonna be a woman of color, but at the same time it's a cop, especially right now.
So there's layers to this for me because Ryan and I, we both stand Tammy Duckworth simply because to
Mhm.
me she is everything that the GOP pretends that Americans are supposed to be. Like she sacrificed for this country. She's
Mhm.
just a badass person in general, and she also is a great legislator. So for Ryan and I, Duckworth was our pick, but simply for optics and the climate we're in right now, it it sucks to say this, but it kind of has to be a black woman.
Mhm.
But once again, there's still layers to that as well because I do feel like Kamala unfairly received some criticism that her peers such as Klobuchar didn't receive, but at the same time, given the current climate, is I mean, it's totally acceptable that she received that the type of heat because I mean, we are in a time where there is serious criminal justice reform being discussed, and the things she did in California went against the current trend, well, the current discourse, excuse me, that's happening. So so I guess my prediction to you is how do you feel like this is going to be received by the masses if, by the end of the week Biden comes out and says like it is Kamala.
But it depends on what masses. um, I've seen some people that are like, "Oh God, awful." Some people, fans, but I think those were people that had supported Kamala during the primaries. I I really honestly have no idea how to predict how this is going to affect the actual election. I don't know what their goal is with that.
Hmm.
And I know like the big push is like, oh, we have to win over the centrists or whatever. I'm not sure because they're also trying to push, being more progressive. Maybe that's
Hmm.
like maybe people that are like that, are police affiliated. But I do feel like she's gonna have to address the current discourse at
Right.
some point, and then that's gonna lose people. So I really have no idea what this is gonna do with them strategically. I agree. I really liked Duckworth, but I never thought it was going to be
Hmm.
at that point. I had a strong feeling it actually was going to be Kamala Harris, mainly because almost always, if it's a VP pick, it was someone that also was running at the same time. Because you have to think about it, it has to be someone that's like very present and very familiar to people if they're going to
Hmm.
vote for them. And I really don't know how Trump and company is gonna go against because you can't really go the whole she's a cop thing because their base is very pro cop. But
Right.
I think their strategy might not be to get they've got their voters. I think their strategy is honestly going to be to get people on the left to try not to vote for
Hmm.
Biden. I think that's what the goal is going to be, honestly, because
Yeah. It,
he's got his voters. I think the whole thing is going to get people to not vote for Biden. Period.
yeah, I was going to mention. Are you familiar with the new account that popped up, accidentally left wing?
I love that account so
I feel like that's going to be their play here. They're gonna be like,
much.
oh, so you are really voting for somebody that put black men in jail? Like, okay, like that's what you're doing now. So I feel like there's going to be the platform. And like you said, they are attacking voters such as you and I, people who were a bit leery of Joe Biden initially, that voted for other candidates. They're gonna attack people like us because they feel like the centrists are going to return to Biden, so they're going to attack people like on the fringes that still need some convincing. So like you said, it is going to be interesting to see um, how they approach this. I will say one approach that isn't looking good is the DNC. I've been reading about what's been going on at the DNC. Well, the talks of the DNC recently, and there are like two head scratching things. First, it could either be potentially good or potentially bad. But John Kasich is speaking at the DNC.
Love
And
him.
this is a GOP
Love
presidential candidate, and also their platform. Now, I just like to mention for everyone out there, when the DNC adopts a platform and they say this is the platform of the Democratic Party, it's up to the discretion of the presidential candidate to accept that platform, but still they say this is what we believe in for this term going forward. And it was an emphatic no for marijuana legislation, which is the worst case of like read the room. And also um,
the Medicare for
the
all
Medicare fraud. So
in a pandemic.
yeah.
And then the marijuana legislation in the middle of
Mhm,
anti-police brutality. I think
mhm.
that could have been the one thing if like they
That could
could
have been
have,
one thing.
especially with Joe Biden's affiliation with the crime bill and then Kamala
Mhm,
Harris being a former prosecutor, if they would have pushed that, I think that would have won a lot of people like, okay, this is the past, but I'm willing to push this, whether it be,
mhm,
a surface level thing or not. I think that even if it's like not to like full legalization, if it's like I feel like if they even would have some part had
mhm,
some kind of middle way, that would have been so much smarter strategically. Because
mhm.
I feel like right now people just don't care as much collectively,
No.
especially as more and more states legalize. Like even I feel like people on the right, like you see more and more people using like CBD oil, like marijuana adjacent things.
Mhm,
That I don't see how they had that much to lose,
mhm.
how they had that much to lose with it, and to not pick up Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic where people have lost their jobs and their insurance, and
So the most
I was
confounding thing,
pissed. The end of the case
yeah.
thing,
So
I was just like, oh my god, they're so out of touch. For me, this has been one of the most infuriating things about the Democrats, and then I'll finish, is that they're always willing to like reach across the aisle, meet in the middle, but the Republicans never do the same thing. It's
mhm,
like you've got to stop trying to like be super nice because
mhm,
it's not going to happen anymore. Like they have, they've stated that like they don't. During Obama, what happened with Obama? They're like, we don't give a fuck about you. Like
uh-huh.
our mission is to just like reject anything you try to do. Like at that point, and you're not impressing anybody. Like I
No.
get it. I don't. I'm sorry because do you not remember the election cycle case? He's not. I mean, oh,
So you actually raised a good point. Like you actually took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the Democrats are notorious for seeing like the pie in the sky things that their base wants. I'm like, oh, you want this? We'll meet you right here. So with the marijuana legislation thing, if they would have said like, okay, we're not against. I mean, we're not for legalizing, but we can talk about
decriminalization.
decriminalizing
Yeah,
small amounts, because we all know that black people are just yeah, black people are subjected to
disproportionate.
yeah, disproportionately subjected to searches for small amounts of marijuana, the marijuana smell. So if they would have got that conversation rolling, then yeah, okay, cool, I could buy that. But to just say like, nah, we're not ready for that, to me it's looking like, okay, you're saying you're ready for a more progressive platform, but at the same time, are you really?
One of
So
those like
once again,
things
mhm.
of like
I'm interested to see how Joe responds, and with his platform and saying like, okay, this is what I'm going to stand for, rolling to the DNC, because right now it's looking pretty trash.
because man, even with I don't remember this because I was a big supporter of Bernie in 2016 when someone had asked him at one of his rallies about it. He's like, I don't know enough about it yet, but I will read up and
Mhm,
I will speak on it next time. And then he comes out and supports it. I feel like that would have sufficed. Like if
Right,
you look
right.
into it, because like the people were like, "Oh, we want an answer now," but he was like, "Okay, let me just look into it." Is that my thing? But and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue because you have states and cities that have legalized and decriminalized for it, but then when people travel, they're facing
Hmm.
consequences. It needs to be federal thing because
Right.
it's coming at a head, and
Hmm.
especially with what's going on, and they should know it. And with both of their associations, that could have been the one thing, the one
The
thing.
one thing.
Even the bare minimum of like, okay, we'll decriminalize certain amounts. Like that's the bare minimum. Like you couldn't even go there, and that's why we
So
need old people out.
yeah, that is the message here, that once things return to like some sense of normalcy, whenever that may be, I do think we need to look into. And by the way, I'm going on a tangent here. I do think you need to look at term limits for for senators and representatives. At the
Supreme
same
Court.
time, if, exact Supreme Court, and at the same time, if there can be a minimum age at which you run for president, like you have to be at least this age, there has to be a maximum age. Therefore, therefore, like no old geezers running for president. Like we need someone who is of the times. Like it
Of
is so
course,
embarrassing. It's
have
so embarrassing to see
anxiety.
senators holding up an iPhone asking about Google. Like it's so
Did you see
embarrassing.
that Republicans? There was a Republican senator. I forget what his name was in what state, but they were questioning Mark Zuckerberg, and they're like, "We need you to account for the time that Donald Trump's account was deleted." And Mark Zuckerberg is like, "That's the wrong platform.
I'm not that
That's
guy. Yeah.
Twitter. I'm on Facebook," and I'm just like, "This is, we need the old people out." And it's just ageism. It's just the same argument. You need to retire. You've got the
Mhm.
money. Just go. You need to
Just
live
go,
this.
just
Like you need
go,
to
just
go.
go, just
And then
go.
they're like, can millennials go? And you're like, do you know, where I'm like the one of the youngest millennials, and I'm 27. Like they're in their 30s,
Right.
almost 40. Like that's normal. That should be normal. It's just infuriating how out of touch. And then I'm tired of like almost having a heart attack every time I see Ruth Bader Ginsburg's name, and I'm just
Oh
like,
no. Yeah.
not this time. That's one reason why it should just like we shouldn't have to be like it shouldn't have to be flipped because they're always
It
going to
shouldn't
have
be that way.
biases. They're always going to have liberal or conservative biases.
Hmm.
You can't remove that. But I think there should be term limits.
Hmm.
That's ridiculous. It's so
Because yeah,
outdated.
every time RB, like I get that notification that says RBG is in the hospital, I'm like Fred Sanford, like is this the one? Elizabeth, is this the one? Like because and by the way, I love RBG, but I mean
She's
yeah,
old.
yeah,
Her kidneys are just like
just
she's holding on out of spite. I,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I wonder if she would have gone back, she would have listened to Obama and retired then.
Yeah,
That's what I'm wondering. She should have.
she definitely should have, I but then again, I do see why she held on, but that's a totally different conversation. But we'll revisit that one after November once we see what actually happens. But for right now, the Hills Act, which is totally trash. Court, last time we had you on, you shed some light on how unemployment works and specifically how the CARES Act works with unemployment. So with the Hills Act and the reduction to, is it, by the way, is it 200 a week or 200 a month?
200 a week, I believe. And the way that they're trying to frame it, so just as a recap, there's the normal unemployment, and that is based on your last 4 quarters of earnings. And then there is the pandemic unemployment. The normal unemployment, the max, this is the max, because you might not always get the max, is 365 gross. The pandemic is 600 gross. Now, not everyone has approved for the normal unemployment. So they're assuming everyone's getting 900 something dollars a week, but not everyone is. And to get the pandemic unemployment, you have to have at least applied for the first one, which takes a long time. And then you have to have proof that you lost your job because of the pandemic. And some people aren't losing their job because of the pandemic. So, in my opinion, because how unemployment works, they don't prorate it based off of cost of living. It's for everybody.
Hmm.
So you may live in a state where it's like I'm in Alabama. That's $900 a week is a lot. Well, first of
Hmm.
all, it's not your business. Just let people get their money. They lost their jobs. But if you're thinking about somewhere like in California or New York City, it's not
Yeah,
probably
it's not a lot.
not a lot at all. So you're talking about if someone was approved for the regular unemployment, that's only 500 a week. Now, talk about someone that wasn't approved for the regular unemployment. Let's just say someone that works at Waffle House and they haven't been working there for that long. Um, they wouldn't get approved, so they're only getting $200 a week. And they frame it as a supplement. It's not just a supplement. It's for everybody that's been affected. And the fact that people are still angry at people who are getting the pandemic unemployment is still infuriating to me. So I think, and the fact that their reasoning is that so people can go back to work, couples and with then raise minimum wage.
Right, and we've had this conversation numerous times.
Mm.
Like you're almost there. You're mad, but you're still
Accidentally
not
left,
mad at the right person. So keep
accidentally left
going up.
wing, almost,
Right,
almost.
you're almost there.
Well, then we'll just have to
So
raise people's wages. Yeah.
right, yeah, yes, exactly. By the way, in the middle of a pandemic, I like to start with that first and foremost. If people don't feel safe returning to work in the middle of a pandemic, especially when possibilities of like hazard pay and increased wages are off the table, then yeah, maybe we should be talking about that instead of people staying at home, well, afraid to return to work. And that's the kicker with me about the HEALS Act, because McConnell said yesterday, this is the one thing I did catch from being passed out yesterday, but he did mention that no bill is going to pass unless corporations have liability protection. So to me, they want to kick people back to work, say, here you go, $1,200, another $1,200, but we're going to push you back to work. We're going to push everyone back to school. But by the way, when this thing inevitably goes wrong, you know, we're cool. Our hands are,
Mhm.
hands off. So, and I, I, this is like the third time I've done this since we recorded, where I'm just like, I don't even know, like
All I have to say,
it's so nefarious that how
all
do
I
you
have to
even
say is when it comes to the old turtle man, coronavirus, you have one job.
just one?
Coronavirus, you have one. Okay, if we're thinking about like the orange person too, you have two jobs. This is all I'm asking. This is you have an elderly person.
It's just
So
one, just
I
one
can't
job.
say what I want to, but
Yeah.
just have one job. Because
It-
he's like truly, like good and evil, whatever. Like Mitch McConnell is truly like one of the most evil people.
yeah,
Um,
he is. He seriously is.
evil, and he knows it. And the thing is, it's people. I know people in Kentucky. They hate him.
Hmm.
He's gonna. I mean, but the person that's gonna run against him is uninspiring. So I have it. I
Oh
have
no. Oh
no doubt.
yeah. Like once oh, I forgot his name.
Yeah, he lost.
Once Booker lost, I was like, eh.
But I just he needs to go, and
He has to go.
not in the way that people are assuming I'm meaning.
Yeah. Beep. But yeah, we'll have to bleep that out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, I didn't say by person. I'm just saying that there's a certain virus out there. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a virus. I've heard
But
about
no,
play being back. That's fine.
which is why the bubonic plague and West Nile are back. Like all the
I
we're
don't
playing all
know.
the hits for 2020.
Well, people are realizing because of the global warming is that like bodies, because viruses could live for a long time, and bacteria too, and frozen bodies are thawing out in
Like
Siberia.
who knew, right?
Yeah, right. It's all it takes is like one animal going and eating the brain of a person or an animal that had it, bubonic plague, and boom, it's back.
Hmm.
And now I'm like, I have no. Now we're talking about people like not washing their hands, not washing their legs, and it's just like, oh, we're going to die.
By the way, if you don't follow Cord on Twitter, she is notorious for like hunting down people who refuse to wash their legs and just absolutely shaming them, which I agree with. Like, wash your legs. Like the water trickling down.
I will shame
Start.
people.
I know this is a politics podcast, but the water trickling down in the shower does not mean you wash your legs. You have to actually wash your legs. Wash your legs, people.
I'm over it. I just. Well, thing is, it just coronavirus is political now. because
It
that's
is.
what the Republican Party is about, is somehow politicizing every. But then they accuse the Democrats of politicizing people, but they're like
Right.
they politicize everything possible. Anything that's science related, though, because it's been going on for decades, they're anti-science. Everything. So
Hmm.
it was only time for them to turn that. But if you remember correctly, when this was just only in like before it had really kind of spread over to the west, like they were all fear mongering. It's not really fear mongering, but at the time it felt like it. They were like pushing how deadly this virus was. Like, oh, have you seen these videos in China? But as soon as it started affecting, people in the West and white people, it,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, now our country looks bad. No, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
People forgot like how like big they were. Like these same people were like pushing COVID to be when it was in China,
Mhm.
when it was a part of an agenda. But now that it's like here and they're mismanaging it, not to say China hasn't, obviously, but we
Yeah,
have room.
what wasn't on my Donald Trump bingo card was politicizing a global pandemic because I knew he would go low, but this is low for even him. Like this is the way he's just managed this from beginning to end. Well, if there ever is, and it's been terrible. Like to come in now and say, okay, wear a mask when if you would have done that, actually, there's so much more you could have done. But if you would have just at the very least say, hey, people, just wear a mask, it.
The bare minimum, because his people will do anything that he says,
Mhm.
anything that he says. So obviously we know he's an irresponsible, but this time it goes to like we're not surprised, but we still can't go without saying it goes to a low we didn't know existed. But I mean, he doesn't care about anyone but himself or
Mhm.
anyone that's not rich. So we kind of knew. But the fact that like this is going to be like a decades, we are literally reliving the 20th century in
Mhm.
order
Right.
all over again, except for some things are together a little bit more. But because I watched a whole documentary on the Spanish flu, and I'm just like, oh god,
It's just
everything's the same.
we learned nothing.
We learn nothing. It's because if you're gonna whitewash history,
Mhm.
America's perfect and everything is red, white, and blue popsicles. You're not gonna. There's nothing to learn.
But you mentioned Trump going low, and for me, this is a new low. If I could actually get it to what? Oh,
Yeah,
repeal of the
there's
fair housing rule. There we go. Okay, got to make this one big because all right. So to go back, 2015, there was. Let me make sure I get the nomenclature right. Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Act. So that means any city that receives money from the HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, the Office of Housing and Urban Development, excuse me, basically they have to look into discriminatory practices if they receive federal money. Therefore, it busts up old, antiquated discriminatory practices about saying like, "Oh, you don't quite qualify for this loan in this neighborhood," yada yada yada, and
yeah, property value.
right. So
And
Trump recently went on a tangent, and he might as well have just dropped the slurs in the tweet because that's what he really means. So, court, when you see these things like Trump saying, like, "Hey, people in the suburbs, your property isn't going to lose value anymore because they won't be able to live here." How does that? Just talk about how that makes
I'm
you
from
feel.
Gardendale, Alabama, so I know exactly what that
Oh
means.
yeah, you know
Because
exactly what we're talking about.
I'm from the town that said, "Hey, in the year I would do 2012, let's try to segregate schools." Blatantly, right after the county paid for us to have a school. Embarrassing. So I know exactly what that means. It's the same reason Gardendale doesn't have a movie theater or public transit. Same reason they don't want certain people, but they never
Mhm,
say who the people are. I want to hear what everyone's over under is on Trump tweeting a slur by October. I think it's a very high chance at this point. It's very blatant. I think it's a call, kind of like a call, whatever it's called, to his base. They know
mhm,
exactly what that means, and I think I'm worried about people because I think they get very violent and they're just looking for any opportunity for it to be the 1960s again, and they can get violent towards black and brown people, primarily black people. But I mean, I'm a social worker but I had, just graduated with my social work degree in 2016. But I knew as soon as he made Ben Carson the Secretary of Secretary of Housing and Development, when he's a medical physician. I'm sure he's good at that, but he has no experience with
No
that.
experience.
Black. That's the reason. That's how I knew. I'm just like, okay. I knew at some point this was going to happen.
Hmm.
I just didn't know when. And it had always been in the back of my mind. As soon as he did that, I was like, oh yeah. And because of his history in real estate, this was
Hmm.
coming. I'm surprised it took this long, but I think this is another reason why people just need to go and vote, because I have a feeling his plans for the next term, it's going to be disaster, like 10 times worse than what we're seeing now,
Hmm.
because he doesn't have to worry about reelection.
Hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're slowly approaching election day. So to me, he's going to slowly become more brazen. And to me, this is the first dog whistle.
Waters.
Yeah, yeah. This is the first dog whistle to say, like, okay, like, I'm down in the polls. Let's revert to some good old racism, because this is saying this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is taking Make America Great Again further. This is saying, like, America was great when they weren't in our neighborhoods. So to me, like I said, he could have just dropped the slur in there to get his point across. And by the way, it's coming. I give you October, I give you mid-October before that before that comes. Like, he's just like, he's gonna I can't decide which slur he's gonna drop yet, because I feel like, I mean, I'm gonna say, I feel like nigger is like low hanging fruit. So I feel like he's gonna test the word.
I'm not gonna say obviously, but this is the one that was used in the 1960s a lot.
Uh
You know what
yeah.
I'm talking about? That one is
Hmm.
that what I feel, because he's gonna be like, oh, that's my time. People, it was acceptable
Yeah.
in my time. That's what I personally feel
Hmm.
is what's gonna drop. I don't think he's gonna use like the ER
Hmm.
one, but I think he's gonna use the. I'm trying to think. I think he's gonna use the one that was said like in papers and stuff and all the time in the
Hmm.
1960s. You know that one. I think that's what he
Right.
kept saying. And then his, when people push back, it's gonna be like, no, political correctness. People said this all the time. It
Hmm.
means black and Spanish. Like he's gonna. That's what I feel. I think he
Hmm.
possibly one of the senators that's up his ass is gonna test it first, and then he'll do it.
Yeah, like, I could, well, I was about to say Steve King is no longer with us, but Steve King would definitely, like, he was just itching to, he was like, I'm ready to
Fine,
drop my slur. Yeah.
fine. He's like, I'm
Well,
ready.
so to wrap this all together, Corey, let's say someone is still on the fence for some reason I just can't even articulate. Someone's still on the fence. They don't want to vote in November. So to wrap it up, what's all at stake here, and why should they vote?
Okay, let me just, because I feel like I'm pretty far left, and one thing I've seen, and for some reason, just the optics of people that are kind of like loud in the leftist sphere are very white. I think, and this might be controversial for me to say, I think for you to not vote is white privilege, because of what is at stake for black and brown people, the brown children in cages. I mean, yeah, Joe Biden's not a great person, and two, it's more of the same. But I think we need to at least get more center at first, because we're thinking about what's going to get repealed and what they're like itching to do. And I think this is going to affect black and brown people like drastically more than it can ever affect someone that looks like me. And I think that's what people need to think about. I guess it might be more controversial, but I don't really care at this point, because that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about all the people I've worked with who are disproportionately affected by these policies. Like we could have grown. Like I grew up really low income, but it still doesn't compare to what someone who's low income and black, and in one of the cities that Trump is wanting to attack. Like it will never compare. And I think a lot of people, even as far progressive and left as you can be, you can still be partaking in white privilege and not knowing it. And I think, and that's really who I'm talking to more, because people are always like, "Oh, black people don't vote." That's not the case. We've seen that's not the case, and if it is, it's really
Mhm.
suppression. I think the people that live in suburbs that are progressive and that have voting stations like mine in Kennesaw that was not bad at all. I think it's your duty to vote, especially, and if you want to be an ally, I think you need to vote.
Yeah, so to carry that point further and to take us home, um, first of all, um, John Lewis just passed away, and he
Mhm.
passed. His life's work was to allow everyone the right to vote, not who to vote for, but simply to cast a vote. So think about people like him. Think about everybody in Selma, Montgomery. When you decide not to vote, just think about what you're saying to their legacy. You're saying their legacy doesn't matter. Also, not to be preachy, but also another thing to consider. We now have a large enough sample size to where the lesser of two evils argument does not work. Like we've seen the greater of the evils, and it's as great as it could be. So the lesser of two evils argument doesn't work here. So no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, if you're far left or if you're moderate, vote for the person who will listen to your concerns. And to wrap this all up, seeing Biden work with Elizabeth Warren, who I voted for, by the way, and I think she would have been an awesome president. Seeing him create a task force with Bernie Sanders, basically bringing everyone together who ran for president, and getting also people like AOC on board. That's what I want for the future of this party. And if Joe can pull this off and be the great uniter of this party, then I think it's a win for everyone, and hopefully a step in the right direction. And I feel like we can't hold them accountable.
And
Um, Go
hopefully,
ahead.
we want less of a mess for Alexander Ocasio-Cortez to have when she's elected president.
Exactly.
I feel
Exactly.
like this
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
step in that direction. This is a step we
Hmm.
all know like it's gonna happen one day. I
Hmm.
think we have to think of like steps, and of course I know like they've just been so, I don't know what the word is, the Democrats just like lukewarm on things,
Hmm.
but right now so much is at stake because it's either lukewarm or Donald Trump.
Right. Right.
It's not like it's just some like, no, it's also like a lukewarm Republican or whatever, like it's like Jeb Bush or something. Like this is Trump. Not only
Hmm.
that, but it's like you've got like Mitch McConnell, Mike Pence, who's a horrible person. Um, there's no good options here at all.
Yeah.
And I think
Think about what another 4 years, 4 years plus of William Barr can
our
do.
nation
So
is not making it another 4 year. I know it's so awful to
she's
say,
not.
but it's
Yeah.
not. And to lose that seat in the Supreme Court
Hmm.
is 2 generations worth of damage.
Hmm.
And we can't, I just think there's so much at stake we can't risk at all. And like I know it's like gross, you're just like just hold your nose and do it.
Hmm.
And then I feel like it's a lot easier to hold Joe Biden accountable than it is to hold Donald Trump accountable.
I totally agree. So, folks, thanks for watching. Once again, I'd like to mention, if you are a resident of the in the state of Alabama, then you can vote no excuse absentee this upcoming election. But you need to get that process done immediately. And once again, I would have had those resources published, but I had to have a root canal that I didn't see coming. So they are coming your way. The resources to tell you how to get that done. I promise you, they're coming your way. Please spread those around so people don't feel like they have to endanger themselves by going out to the polls. Just vote absentee, no excuses. So until next week, Courtney and I are signing off, and goodbye.